I used to believe family was my safest place, until the night I discovered the cruelest betrayal. Imagine opening your phone and finding a secret group chat where your own brother mocks your pain, laughs at your failures, and calls you a parasite. The same brother I once sacrificed everything for. What do you do when blood turns into poison? Do you stay silent or do you fight back? This is not a story of blind revenge. It's about how I turned devastation into strategy, and how his empire crumbled under the weight of his own secrets. I grew up believing that loyalty was the same as love. My parents drilled into me the mantra that family comes first, and I clung to that phrase like scripture. My brother Ethan was older, sharper, and louder than me. He could walk into a room and people would instantly notice him, while I often felt invisible beside his shadow. But none of that mattered to me. He was my brother, and I believed that meant I owed him everything. When Ethan decided to start his business, I emptied nearly all of my savings to help him. He promised me I would get the money back when things took off. I didn't even ask for a contract. I trusted his word. I told myself this is what family does. And when he fell sick months later, I took weeks off work to care for him, driving across town every day with meals, medicine, and encouragement. He never thanked me, not once, but I convinced myself gratitude wasn't necessary. After all, we were family. Looking back now, I see how trauma bonding works. You learn to accept mistreatment because it's wrapped in the disguise of love. My parents praised me whenever I sacrificed for Ethan, calling me the good daughter. They overlooked the way he snapped at me or dismissed my needs. The family system conditioned me to believe that my worth was measured by how much pain I could endure for others. And I absorbed it so deeply that I stopped questioning whether it was fair. The cruelest twist. My kindness became ammunition against me. My brother called me soft, weak, even naive. He mocked the way I put others before myself, as if my compassion was a flaw to be exploited. I thought I was earning love. Instead, I was tightening the chains around my own wrists. I told myself, this is family. But deep down, something felt wrong. I thought it was love, but it was a leash. The signs were there, of course, but I ignored them. Ethan never paid me back a cent. Every time I brought it up, he laughed and said, "Don't be so dramatic, Claire. It's just money. You'll survive." My parents sided with him, telling me I was selfish for even asking. "Your brother is building something important. Why can't you support him?" they scolded. Their words carved into me like blades, and I silenced my protests. The gaslighting became routine. When Ethan forgot to return my calls for weeks, he told me I was clingy. When he borrowed my car and returned it with dents, he claimed they were already there. Every complaint I raised became proof that I was too sensitive. Even when he openly joked about my failed marriage in front of relatives, they told me to lighten up. Somehow, I became the problem for daring to feel hurt. Then came the group chats. At first, I thought I was paranoid, noticing whispers that stopped when I entered a room, cousins exchanging knowing looks. But one evening, while borrowing my mother's tablet to help her set up email, I stumbled upon a notification, a family group chat I wasn't part of. The title was cruel, Claire's Drama Updates. My heart clenched as I read messages filled with mocking jokes about my struggles, my job loss, even my therapy sessions. And at the center of it all was Ethan, orchestrating the ridicule. I froze. For years, I had carried the weight of their needs, their emergencies, their comfort. And this was my reward? A digital circle where my failures were comedy. The betrayal was sharp enough to steal my breath. But instead of reacting with rage, I felt hollow. It was as if the floor beneath me gave way, and I tumbled into a truth I could no longer deny. They had never seen me as an equal, only as a resource. And yet, even as humiliation burned my skin, a part of me clung to a single memory. I was 10 years old, standing on a playground where a group of kids mocked me for my second-hand clothes. Ethan had stepped in that day, shoving one of them aside and declaring, "Don't mess with my sister." For years, I replayed that moment whenever doubt crept in, convincing myself that deep down he cared. But sitting there with the tablet in my lap, that memory turned sour. I realized it was nothing but an illusion, a fleeting performance that I had inflated into proof of love. Maybe he had defended me once, but now he mocked me to anyone who would listen. The brother I thought would always protect me had become my cruelest enemy. And I had no idea that this revelation was only the beginning. That childhood memory I clung to was about to shatter into dust. I didn't yet know that one night soon, everything I believed about Ethan and about family itself would collapse in ways I could never imagine. And when it did, I would finally see the truth, raw and undeniable. I had no idea that the past was about to betray me again. The night it all collapsed began so ordinarily that I almost missed the storm gathering in plain sight. We were celebrating my mother's birthday at a small family dinner. The table was crowded with dishes she loved: roast chicken, mashed potatoes, wine that Ethan insisted on bringing. Everyone laughed loudly, the way people do when they're trying to cover cracks beneath the surface. At some point, my mother asked me to take pictures on her phone. She handed it over casually as if it was nothing. But as I tapped to unlock the screen, a notification slid across the top. Another message in that family group chat I wasn't supposed to see. My chest tightened. I knew better than to look, but something in me snapped. I opened it. The words stung like acid. Ethan had just written, "Claire's probably going to ask for money again. Watch, she'll make tonight about her." A wave of laughter emojis followed. I scrolled further back, my pulse hammering. There were weeks, months of this cruelty. Lines about my divorce, about my career struggles, even mocking the fact that I was in therapy. And then I saw it, the line that made my stomach twist. It wasn't Ethan this time. It was my mother. She had typed, "Sometimes I think Claire likes playing the victim. She gets attention that way." The phone nearly slipped from my hand. My mother, my one hope, the person I thought might quietly understand me, was laughing at my pain alongside the rest. The betrayal sliced so deeply I couldn't breathe. I excused myself from the table, stumbling to the bathroom, where I locked the door and pressed both hands to the counter. My reflection blurred behind tears. My chest heaved as humiliation turned to anger, then to a hot, bitter rage. I cried until the sobs hardened into something else, something sharper. The realization hit me with brutal clarity. I had been a fool. Every sacrifice, every late-night rescue, every dollar given had been for people who saw me as entertainment, not family. The love I thought was unconditional was nothing but a performance. And yet, even as I wiped my face, another thought cut through. If even my mother has turned, who do I have left? If my own mother could mock me, Who else could I trust? In the days that followed, grief gave way to determination. For the first time, I stopped asking, "Why are they doing this to me?" and started asking, "What can I do about it?" The answer terrified me. I needed to stop being a victim. I needed to become something else entirely. I began slowly, carefully. I purchased a small voice recorder and slipped it into my purse whenever I visited family. I copied text threads, saving them in encrypted folders. I stopped reacting to Ethan's jabs and instead noted the exact words, the exact time, the witnesses present. I practiced a new mask, calm, unshaken, while inside I took meticulous notes. It was exhausting but strangely empowering. For the first time, I felt like I was no longer playing defense. I was building a case, not just against Ethan, but against the lies that had ruled my life. Then came the moment that shifted everything. One evening, while helping my mother with her computer, I stumbled into Ethan's cloud storage. The folder was poorly hidden, a string of numbers that looked innocuous at first. Curiosity overcame me, and I clicked. Inside were documents I couldn't fully understand at first, financial records, contracts, scanned receipts. But as I skimmed, the pattern became horrifyingly clear. Ethan wasn't just careless with money, he was hiding it. Large transfers routed through shell companies, payments to names I didn't recognize. It was bigger than unpaid debts. It was fraud. My heart raced as I screenshotted and saved everything I could. For years, Ethan had mocked me as weak, dependent. But here on his own server was proof of his own fragility, the cracks in his empire. I suddenly understood that my role in this family was about to change. Still, the weight of it all crushed me. I booked an appointment with my therapist, unsure how much I could reveal, but needing to let the dam break somewhere safe. In her quiet office, with the soft hum of a clock ticking behind us, I told her what I'd seen. For the first time, I admitted out loud, "I feel like I'm losing my family, but maybe I never had them to begin with." My voice trembled, and tears came again. Not the hot rage from before, but something fragile, aching. She looked at me gently and said, "What you're feeling isn't weakness, Claire. It's clarity. And clarity is the beginning of freedom." Her words stayed with me. I walked out lighter, not because the pain had vanished, but because I could finally see a path forward. I wasn't ready to destroy Ethan yet, but I wasn't willing to be his victim anymore. I wasn't a lamb waiting for the slaughter. Not anymore. But I wasn't a wolf yet, either. I was something in between, something waiting, sharpening, preparing. The deeper I stepped into Ethan's world, the more I realized how little I had known about the man I once called my brother. What started as a few suspicious documents hidden in his cloud became the first thread in a tangled web of secrets. I pulled at it carefully, terrified that if I tugged too hard, the whole thing would snap and bury me beneath it. I spent nights poring over files, teaching myself how to track money that had been deliberately disguised. I wasn't an accountant, but desperation made me a fast learner. Patterns emerged, transfers bouncing across borders, companies that existed only on paper. And then I saw something chilling, a series of cryptocurrency transactions, tucked inside a blockchain wallet. The amounts were staggering, and the names connected to them were even worse. One of the recipients was a known consultant for a rising political figure. The realization hit like a punch. Ethan wasn't just hiding money, he was laundering it, funneling funds into hands that could alter public power. My hands shook as I wrote down every detail. I wanted to scream, but instead I turned to my journal. Writing steadied me in a way nothing else could. On the page, I admitted what I couldn't say aloud. I'm terrified. What if I'm in over my head? What if finding the truth puts me in danger? But alongside the fear was a strange sense of exhilaration. For years, Ethan had painted me as powerless, a perpetual victim. Now I held the kind of information that could shatter him. Still, each time I stared at those files, a voice whispered in the back of my mind. If I expose him, will I survive it? If I reveal everything, will I even be safe? If I go public, do I make myself the next target? Information alone wasn't enough. I needed allies, people who could help me decode what I'd found, people who would believe me even if my own blood didn't. My first step was a lawyer recommended by a colleague. He listened quietly as I laid out the situation, then leaned back and said, "You're sitting on something explosive, but if you're serious about this, you need to be ready for a war." The word war sent a shiver down my spine, but I nodded. I had already been living in a battlefield for years. Only now I was arming myself. Through him, I was introduced to a financial investigator, someone who specialized in unraveling shell corporations. He confirmed what I had suspected. The documents pointed to large-scale fraud. His advice was simple but urgent. Document everything. Don't confront him directly. Build a case strong enough that no one can dismiss it as a family feud. Still, I knew legal paths could be slow, and Ethan was powerful enough to manipulate the system. I needed leverage that could move quickly. So I reached out to a journalist I once met at a networking event. She specialized in corruption stories, and when I hinted at what I had uncovered, she immediately agreed to meet. Over coffee, I showed her just enough to capture her attention. She looked at me, eyes sharp. "If this is real, you're holding a bomb. Are you ready for what happens when it goes off?" Her warning echoed my fears, but I didn't back down. "I don't have a choice," I said. "He's already destroyed too much." The most unexpected ally, however, came from inside Ethan's circle. A man named Marcus, one of his longtime employees, reached out to me anonymously. At first, I thought it was a trap, but when we finally spoke, his voice carried the bitterness of someone long betrayed. "I've worked for him for years," Marcus confessed. "He treats everyone like tools to be discarded. I'm done protecting him. If you want proof, I have plenty." Marcus handed me internal emails, hidden ledgers, and even recordings of private meetings. His evidence didn't just confirm my suspicions, it painted Ethan as ruthless, willing to sacrifice anyone for his gain. The irony stung. For so long, Ethan had mocked me as weak, yet it was his own arrogance, his mistreatment of those closest to him, that created the cracks I could exploit. His own people were now turning against him. And still, even amid all the revelations, I needed grounding. One evening, after hours of cross-checking files and planning next steps, I broke down. I called my best friend, someone who had watched me suffer for years but never judged. When I finally told her everything, her silence was followed by an embrace so tight it nearly broke me. I cried into her shoulder, not tears of despair this time, but of release. For once, someone believed me without hesitation. For once, I wasn't alone. I had spent my entire life carrying others, sacrificing pieces of myself to earn love. Now others were finally carrying me. It was a fragile but vital shift, one I knew I couldn't squander. Piece by piece, the board was set. The evidence was collected, the allies were in place, the game was changing, the pawns were ready, and all that remained was the moment to flip the table. The day Ethan unveiled his latest project was meant to be his triumph. The hotel ballroom was packed with investors, journalists, and politicians eager to shake his hand. Flashing cameras lit the room, and a banner stretched across the stage announced his new venture. A multi-million-dollar expansion promising jobs, growth, and prestige. He looked every inch the untouchable businessman, striding onto the stage in his tailored suit, grinning as though the world belonged to him. I sat in the audience, my palms slick with sweat. The USB drive in my purse felt heavier than a weapon. My heart pounded so hard, I thought it might betray me before I even stood. This was the moment I had prepared for, the moment to turn years of humiliation into one strike that would shatter his empire. As Ethan launched into his speech, I caught the journalist's eye from across the room. She gave me the smallest nod. That was my cue. My fingers trembled as I passed her the drive under the table. She slipped it into her laptop, and within minutes, the ballroom's giant projector screen flickered. Instead of Ethan's promotional video, documents splashed across the screen. Contracts, transfers, ledgers linking him to fraudulent accounts. The audience gasped, murmurs rippling like wildfire. Ethan froze at the podium, his practiced smile faltering. This is a mistake," he stammered, reaching toward the screen as if he could pull the truth back into the shadows. But before he could recover, another blow landed. His old business rival, a man Ethan had humiliated years ago, stood from the back of the room with a microphone in hand. "Mistake?" he said, his voice booming. "Then explain this." He played an audio clip, Ethan's own voice, mocking investors, bragging about payoffs, laughing about how easily he manipulated people. The room erupted, gasps, curses, reporters scrambling with their recorders. I clutched the edge of my chair, my vision swimming. My knees felt weak, and for a terrifying second, I thought I might faint right there in front of everyone. The adrenaline was too much, years of pain condensed into one explosive unveiling. My breaths came short and shallow, and I pressed my hand against my stomach to steady myself. But through the blur of lights and voices, I held on to one truth. This was the moment he could no longer escape. His empire, built on lies, was collapsing in real time. What I didn't realize was that Ethan wasn't finished. Even cornered, he had one more card to play. The fallout was immediate. By the time I returned home that night, social media was already ablaze. Ethan's name trended across platforms. Headlines screamed corruption, betrayal, scandal. But Ethan wasn't the type to surrender quietly. By morning, his counterattack had begun. On his official pages, he posted long statements calling me a liar, a bitter sister inventing stories out of jealousy. He shared carefully edited photos, twisted anecdotes from our past, painting himself as the victim of my vendetta. He hired a PR firm to amplify the narrative. Within hours, strangers filled my inbox with insults, threats, and accusations. My family fractured under the weight of it. My father called, demanding to know why I had done this to my own flesh and blood. Cousins accused me of destroying the family's reputation. Yet others, silently at first, began reaching out with words of support. A cousin I hadn't spoken to in years messaged, "I believe you. I've seen how he treats people. Stay strong." For every voice condemning me, another emerged whispering truth. The family that had once been united against me was now splitting apart. The chaos left me shaken. I wanted to scream, to defend myself against every lie, but exhaustion pressed down like chains. Instead, I sat at my desk late one night, the only light coming from a single lamp. A blank page stared back at me. I picked up my pen and began writing, not for Ethan, not for the world, but for myself. Claire, I wrote, you are not the villain in this story. You are not weak, selfish, or crazy. You are the one who finally said enough. They may call you names, they may try to erase your truth, but remember this, you know what you've seen, you know what you've survived, and that cannot be taken from you. Tears blurred the ink, but I kept writing until my hand cramped. For once, the words weren't evidence or strategy. They were survival. They were hope. I leaned back, closing my eyes, the silence of the night wrapping around me. The war was raging louder than ever, outside my walls, but inside, a quiet resolve settled. The battle wasn't over. If anything, it had only just begun. The war for truth had finally reached its real beginning. The downfall came faster than I expected. Within a week of the press conference, investors began withdrawing their money. His business partners cut ties, publicly distancing themselves from Ethan to save their own reputations. The glossy empire he had built, magazines praising his genius, interviews showcasing his charm, crumbled like a house of cards. His offices, once buzzing with ambition, became silent as employees fled. But the worst was yet to come. A whistleblower, emboldened by what I had exposed, stepped forward with evidence of something darker than financial fraud. Ethan had been funneling money to offshore accounts tied to a politician under federal investigation. The revelation exploded across the media. It was no longer just about business deception. It was potential criminal conspiracy. For the first time, the possibility of prison loomed over him. Watching it unfold was surreal. For years, Ethan had walked through life untouchable, every lie polished into gold. Now, every secret I had uncovered turned into a weapon against him. Reporters camped outside his home. Headlines screamed his name. Social media flooded with outrage. He was no longer the golden child of the family. He was a liability, a disgrace. And yet, as satisfying as it was to watch his world burn, I felt a strange emptiness in my chest. Revenge was never meant to heal the wounds inside me. That night, I drove to the cemetery where my father was buried. The grass was damp under my shoes, the air sharp with autumn chill. I stood before the gravestone, tracing the carved letters with trembling fingers. "Dad," I whispered, "I did it. I stood up. I didn't let him win." My voice cracked, but the words steadied me. For the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't just surviving. I was reclaiming myself. Tears rolled down my face, but they weren't heavy with shame. They were cleansing, carrying away the weight of silence I had borne for too long. Still, deep inside, I knew something. True justice wasn't about his downfall. It wasn't about him crumbling. It was about what I built from the ruins. Because real justice isn't found in watching someone fall. It's in rising above them. In the weeks that followed, a quiet transformation began. The phone calls slowed, the insults faded, and the noise of Ethan's smear campaign dissolved under the louder roar of truth. The investigations widened. My name was no longer dragged through the mud, but spoken with a kind of wary respect. I expected to feel triumphant, but what I felt was release. My shoulders loosened, my chest expanded. For the first time in decades, I could breathe without waiting for the next blow. It was as though I had finally stepped out from under a shadow that had followed me my entire life. Then came an unexpected twist. I began receiving messages from people I didn't know, employees, business partners, even distant acquaintances of Ethan. They told me their stories, unpaid wages, stolen ideas, broken promises. Some had lost homes, marriages, years of work because of him. One woman wrote, "I thought I was crazy for so long. Thank you for showing the world who he really is. You gave me my sanity back." Their words shook me. I had thought my battle was mine alone, that my pain was isolated, but here were dozens, maybe hundreds, who had suffered in silence too. My act of defiance had become a ripple, giving others courage to speak. I wasn't just reclaiming my life, I had sparked something larger. One afternoon, I sat in a quiet cafe, sipping coffee by the window. The world outside bustled, people rushing to their own destinations, unaware of the storm I had survived. For once, I wasn't haunted by the weight of family expectations or Ethan's mocking voice in my head. I was simply Claire, no longer defined by sacrifice, betrayal, or rage. Just me. I smiled, not the forced smile I had worn at family dinners, but something gentler, freer. The sun caught in the glass, and for a brief moment, I felt a peace so deep it startled me. But even in that peace, a realization lingered. My journey wasn't finished. I had torn down the walls that trapped me, but now I faced the open space beyond them. And in that space, I had to decide what to build. Because my story wasn't over. Not yet. Cutting ties with Ethan wasn't a single act. It was 1,000 small choices stitched together with resolve. I blocked his number, deleted every message thread, and informed the lawyer that any future communication had to go through legal channels. There would be no more midnight calls, no sudden requests for money, no desperate attempts to lure me back into his chaos. But it wasn't just him. I drew new lines with the rest of my family, lines I should have drawn years ago. When my mother called, asking me to let bygones be bygones, I said no. When relatives tried to guilt me into supporting blood, I replied calmly, "Family without respect is just another prison." Each word tasted like steel on my tongue, but with each refusal, I felt stronger. Then something unexpected happened. A few family members who had once mocked me in that secret group chat reached out. They confessed they had gone along with Ethan out of fear, out of habit, out of weakness. One cousin wrote, "I'm sorry, Claire. I see now how cruel we were. You didn't deserve it." Their apologies didn't erase the scars, but they surprised me. For the first time, I realized that Ethan's power had stretched over all of us, and I wasn't the only one breaking free. One evening, I sat at my desk and pulled out a blank page. At the top, I wrote, "Things I will never allow again." The list grew quickly. I will never allow someone to mock my pain and call it love. I will never allow money to become a weapon against me. I will never allow silence to bury me alive. Each sentence felt like laying a brick, building a fortress where I could finally rest without fear. As I put the pen down, a calm washed over me. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for permission to exist. For the first time, I felt free. Freedom, however, wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something new. With space finally cleared of his poison, I asked myself, what do I want to build? The answer came slowly, shaped by every scar and every story I had carried. I wanted to help others like me, those trapped in toxic families, those silenced by loyalty, turned into chains. So I began small. A blog, a few articles, a recorded conversation with a friend. Then I launched a podcast, my voice trembling at first, but gaining strength with each episode. I shared my journey, not as a victim, but as a survivor, a strategist, a woman reborn. To my astonishment, the podcast spread quickly. Messages poured in from women across the country. They told me about their fathers, mothers, siblings who drained them dry. They spoke of their guilt, their fear, their longing for freedom. One wrote, "Hearing your voice gave me the courage to walk away." Another, "You made me realize I'm not crazy. I'm just not alone." Soon, journalists reached out, asking to feature my story. Organizations invited me to speak at conferences. What had begun as whispers into the void had become a chorus, resonating with thousands who had lived the same hidden nightmare. But beyond the spotlight, my healing was quieter. In the mornings, I took long walks on the beach with my dog. I let the ocean breeze wash over me, the rising sun painting gold across the horizon. I listened to the waves and thought about how, for the first time, I didn't have to brace myself for Ethan's insults, my mother's dismissals, or the endless demands of a family that mistook sacrifice for love. There was still pain. There always would be. But now the pain had somewhere to go. It had been transformed into something bigger than me, into a mission that gave meaning to every wound. I no longer lived in reaction to what had been done to me. I lived in creation of what I could choose. Standing on the shore one morning, my dog tugging gently at the leash, I whispered into the wind. I didn't just survive, I was reborn. The words didn't tremble, they carried clear and strong, like a vow to the ocean itself, and this time I knew they were true. I had not only escaped, I had reclaimed. I had not only endured, I had thrived. I had not only lived, I had risen. Because I wasn't just alive, I had been reborn.